Takeoff occurred at 9:20 this morning.
This was a new fuel formulation, again, that had been proven and tested on the ground.
At approximately 10:12, we became aware of an in-flight anomaly.
One person who had obviously was deceased.
This is never easy when this happens. The entire community bonds together, comes together, and our hearts go out for the families, the friends, the loved ones, the deceased.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us for 17 News. I'm Kristen Price. We're continuing our team coverage tonight of SpaceShipTwo's deadly crash in eastern Kern County. Jason Galvin will have more from Mojave today, where he spoke with witnesses. And Agrazio has more on the pilot who was killed in the crash as sheriff's officials released his identity today. And we start with Jason Galvin, who was in Mojave this afternoon.
Yeah, good evening, Kristen. It's been 34 hours since SpaceShipTwo crashed in the desert north of Mojave, killing one pilot and seriously injuring another. While investigators are still searching for answers, I spoke with one community insider today who says yesterday's flight had some involved with the program worried before it ever left the ground.
The bottom line is that there was a lot of nervousness about this test on Friday. And I have to stress that we don't know what happened. We don't know if it was the engine, we don't know if it was the fuel mix, or maybe a structural failure, but and that'll be determined. But there was concern before the flight.
Is concern coming from within the company and your sources, the space community in general?
All of the above.
Commercial space blogger Douglas Messier says some of that concern may have stemmed from a switch in fuel types, from a rubber-based mixture to a plastic-based one. The change was announced in May.
One of the issues that I've had the last few months since they announced that switch is just in hearing from various sources as to whether or not they were doing sufficient testing on the ground.
That question is left for the NTSB to answer, and while the organization has never been the lead on a spacecraft crash before, they believe there will be plenty of data to work with.
This was a test flight, and test flights are typically very well documented in terms of data, and we may get some video feed. We may have lots of evidence that will help us with the investigative process.
Richard Branson arrived in Mojave this morning. He expressed his condolences to pilot Michael Owsbury's family and says if whatever brought SpaceShipTwo down can be fixed, Virgin Galactic will continue on in Owsbury's honor.
Once we found out what went wrong, if we can overcome it, we'll make absolutely certain that the dream lives on.
While Branson holds out hope for the future of Virgin Galactic, and there's more questions left unanswered here on the ground, the tight-knit aerospace community in Mojave is left to cope with the horrific images of yesterday's crash.
Messier and his colleague, Ken Brown, went searching for the debris from the crash. What they came upon was unthinkable. Messier interviewed a FedEx driver who was first on the scene.
Seconds after him and I passed each other, something fell out of the sky, smacked the ground, big cloud of dust. I immediately stopped to see if he needed help. I thought maybe something happened to him, and turns out it was a seat or a space shuttle of some kind. There's pieces everywhere, and unfortunately the person's still in the seat.
Messier says the FedEx driver, a veteran of 2 tours in Iraq, attempted to help that person, SpaceShipTwo pilot Michael Owsbury.
He had gone to the seat and turned it over to see if there was anything he could do for the pilot. There was nothing he could do.
Both Messier and Brown say the crash has shaken the Mojave community to its core. Messier says many of his friends and sources that work on or around the SpaceShipTwo project still haven't come to grips with the events that transpired yesterday, and he questions if they ever will. Officials from the National Transportation Safety Board will give an update at 8 o'clock tonight. In the studio, Jason Galvin, 17 News.
Thanks, Jason. We're learning more tonight about Kern County's fallen hero as the coroner's office released the name of the pilot that died in the crash. 17's Ann Grazia has more on his legacy. Ann.
39-year-old Michael Tyner Alsbury leaves behind 2 children and his wife, Michelle Sailing. Alsbury was an employee of Scaled Composites in Mojave, California for 14 years and worked as a project engineer and test pilot. Alsbury co-piloted SpaceShipTwo's first glide and first powered flight. He received his bachelor's from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in aeronautical engineering and has more than 15 years of flight experience. A second pilot on board, 43-year-old Peter Siebold, was injured, but it was able to parachute to the ground. Siebel is being treated at Antelope Valley Hospital in Lancaster.
The bravery of test pilots generally cannot be overstated. Nobody underestimates the risks involved in space travel.
This morning, 17 News reporter Jason Galvin visited Alsbury's home. Multiple cars were outside and family representatives kindly asked all media to leave, requesting no photos to be taken. This came after neighbors say reporters from a British online news source pounded on doors last night trying to get people to talk. Alsbury neighbor Leonard Alvarez says Mail Online quoted him without his permission. He also says he asked Mail Online not to disturb Alsbury's wife, Michelle Sailing. Alvarez says reporters assured him they wouldn't bother her, but they already had. They went to Sailing's house. Alvarez went on to say that this is a terrible time for everyone in the community, and Sailing and her family have a long recovery ahead. Ann DeGrazia, 17 News.
Thanks, Ann, and stay with us here on KGET for our continuing coverage of the SpaceShipTwo crash. We'll continue to keep you updated here on 17 News at 11, plus our website, kerngoldenempire.com, and our KGET Facebook page. Also, if you have video or photos of the crash, we'd like to see them. Email them to us at 17news@kget.com.